Hi, I'm Peter Edwards. I pastor New Life Open Bible Church in San Jacinto, California, and I'd like to share a story with you today. It's a story that has tremendously impacted my life and the life of everyone I know who's heard it. It's a story of a girl who was born the end of November 2006. Her birth was anticipated by her family with great joy. Everything was great up until the moment she got stuck in the birth canal. When she was born, she had no pulse. Doctors tried for 21 minutes to revive her. They failed. Her family prayed for her. God raised her from the dead. This is that story. First, I want to introduce several folks who have come tonight from Hammett Hospital. And Dr. Judalina is with us. Doctor, how long have you been a doctor?
Too old. Too long.
Too long.
I graduated from medical school in 1966.
Wow.
From the Philippines. I've been a practicing physician for too long. I can't count, but let's say.
And you are
I'm an obstetrician gynecologist. I have a huge family. I consider all the babies I deliver grandchildren, my grandkids, and Siara is a special one.
Amen. Amen. And we also have Becky Gomez, and you work at Hammett Hospital.
Right, and I've worked at Hammett Hospital 25 years, and the last 10 years I've worked as an RN in the labor and delivery unit.
Okay, and Annette Greenwood.
Yes, I'm Annette Greenwood. I've worked for the facility 18 years and have worked in obstetrics most of that time, and now I'm the administrator, executive director of nursing.
Great. We also have the Hernandez family.
Yes. I'm Manuel Hernandez. This is my wife, Maria, my daughter, Sharisa, and baby Siara.
Now, the story kind of began really a year and a day before Siara was born, because on November the 26th, 2005, something happened.
Yes, we miscarried. I didn't know I was pregnant, but we had miscarried on November 26th of 2005. I was diagnosed with diabetes in I believe it was 2002, January of 2002, and so it was a surprise to us that we were even able to have children anymore, because it had been 14 years with Sharisa before we had gotten pregnant.
And so how did the miscarriage affect you guys?
Well, it was both a shock and excitement at the same time, because we, like Maria said, it had been a long period of time before our last year. We have 3 children, and they're all teenagers, and we had no idea that we didn't anticipate having another child. We didn't think we were able to even have a child. We weren't watching that area, but just so happens that Maria was sick right around Thanksgiving time, and and she was real sick. I think she even went into the emergency and ended up going home. Didn't get noticed. She went back a day or two later and found out that she was pregnant, but at the same time she had miscarried. I was at work that day and I was called by my son, told me that mom's in the hospital and she had a miscarriage, which was really shocked, because mom being in the hospital meant urgency, concern, I need to get home. But that she had a miscarriage was I wasn't sure who I was talking to, or if they were talking to the right person, because we had no idea, that she was pregnant. And so, I rushed home. We got home and we kind of just mourned together both in the hospital and home, and many days after thereof, because we lost a child, but still in the back of our mind we were, it was the idea of that, wow, we could actually have another child. so within that time period, it was very important, and I think that's the reason why we're talking about it, because during that period, Maria's health was a concern. Her diabetes, we were dealing with that, understanding how to eat and how to watch her diet, and whether it played a role in what happened, we don't know, but we do know that we had to really monitor her health now. It was a little bit more concern of how we take care of our bodies now, but the loss was something you just can't ignore, and we had a child, but we lost that child, and through much comforting through brothers and sisters and our church and surrounding family of God, we were comforted by individuals just both praying with us, sharing scriptures with us that were comforting, and giving us just an encouraging word, which we believe were from the Lord. We knew that God would fill and replace that void or that emptiness or that sadness. We had no idea that it would be through another child, but we just knew that God is merciful, and he's able to be there and love us in that time of that we were mourning.
Yeah. And then when was it that you actually discovered that you were pregnant again? Do you remember?
Dr. Julina's thinking. He's like, wait a minute.
January, probably towards late or early February, mid-February.
It was February.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Towards
February
20th, maybe
20
somewhere around that.
That's pretty soon
I
after.
think it was the 26th,
Uh-huh.
23rd,
Yeah.
26th.
And you found out you're pregnant again, and so what were you thinking then?
Well, we right away knew that we would have to be really careful. There's
My sugars were actually my blood counts were actually going up and down, and they were just they were scaring me, and I was sick, and from the miscarriage that I had, my hormones were also pretty much out of whack also. So my body was just going through all kinds of things. I was feeling sick all the time and getting hot flashes and just going through all these different feelings. And so when I was feeling ill, I went to the doctors and they did a pregnancy test through my blood and stuff, and so
You were pregnant.
I was pregnant.
And excited?
Actually, I had tested at home first,
Oh, yeah.
and so
And so were you excited?
yes,
Yes,
excited
excited.
and
Yeah,
shocked.
absolutely. shocked again, but excited. There was just this feeling of caution still. We were
Yeah.
excited. We didn't know if we could really express that excitement, with the loss so soon behind us.
So November 27th, early in the morning, you realized this is the day.
Yes. I was, I'd woken up because I was having a contraction, and they're really light and mild at first. And so I started getting ready and finished. I was packing my bags, and I was trying to wake Manuel up. Took a while before I got him up, but I was like, today's the day we're gonna have the baby.
You got there about
Before 5, I knew when we checked in. I believe it was 4:45 when we actually signed in, and so we went into the emergency, and emergency sent us over to OB to maternity.
okay. So 11/27, November 27th, you guys are at the hospital, and what were you doing that day?
Actually, my shift starts around 7 a.m. and I came in and I took report, and it was a very busy morning in OB, and I think I remember we were doing C-sections and running around. I kept running in the room and checking on her, and she was doing great. The baby was just doing great, and we were checking Maria's blood sugars every 2 hours. They were running great. She was just a model patient. And I kept checking to see if she wanted anything for pain. Nope, she was going to do this on her own. And Manuel was there at the bedside, and their daughter, and they were just doing great.
Okay. And what were you doing that day?
I was actually up in my office, which is 4 stories above the OB area, and going about my daily duties. And also, I had a friend that was due about the same time that worked at the hospital who had called and said that she was having some issues. And so we had helped her get down to OB, another bit of work for Becky, and to check her out to make sure that her baby was okay. And I had felt that there was an unction from the Lord to pray that day. There was a real heavy heart and a heavy spirit actually in my office. So I thought that I was praying for my friend, Lisa, who was expecting at the same time. And it ended up that she was fine. And so I was just working, going about my business when some of the events started taking place.
So Becky, you said that everything's going well, that the family's there and the baby's doing good. You can tell by the monitor and everything's just going really well. And then when did you realize that there might be a problem?
Well, it took a while. Maria was completely dilated and ready to have the baby. And I called Dr. Julina. He came in, he checked her, and she had a little pushing to do. And everything still looked great, and we were all very excited. And then Dr. Julina left the room, went across the hall because there was another lady over there getting ready to deliver. So I got Maria ready to deliver, and I remember I was coaching her, and I said, "Push, Maria." And Dr. Julina heard us, and he came running over because he thought the baby was almost out. So we were doing great, and she was pushing, and it took a while for Siara to come down to deliver, and everything still looked okay. And another nurse came in the room and was helping me, and we were coaching her. And then it started taking a little bit long. It seemed a little longer than we thought it would be. It was Maria's 4th baby. And then finally, Sierra's head was delivered. And at that point, I believe there was a cord around her neck, and Dr. Julina removed the cord. And usually at that point, it doesn't take too much longer to get the shoulders out, and the rest of the body usually just follows very quickly.
Right.
And we continued to coach her to push, and the shoulders weren't coming. The shoulders were not coming out. And so we're a little concerned, but not too unduly concerned at that point. But then it started to take longer and longer, and at that point we were concerned. I left the room with the other nurse there just briefly, and I yelled out for the secretary to call respiratory. And so when the word was put out for respiratory to delivery, that isn't something that you hear. And so there was a room full of people, pretty much, people filtering in, people to help, because this is not something that happens. So they knew that we were in trouble in there. And during that time, I know that Manuel started to notice the look on my face that went from joy to grave concern. And baby Sierra's little head then was starting to change color, darken.
And her body's still inside?
Her body is still inside. And we're continuing to do different position changes, different procedures, of course, that we would do to try to deliver the shoulders. And Manuel starts to pray and to cry. And their daughter begins to pray and cry. And then I'm crying and praying to myself, but at the same time I'm in a clinical mode, but I'm also knowing that it is beyond clinical at this point, that we're at a very emergent situation, and that we need God's intervention definitely at this point.
I initially heard that the OB department called for an emergency room physician to go to the nursery, which is an unusual call. We don't hear that, and so it perked my interest. I honestly, I normally don't even hear much of the clarity of the codes. I'm in the office, for whatever reason, God really wanted me to hear this, I think, and so I was able to hear that there was they asked for emergency room physician to go to OB. I called down because usually the customary practice is if you're going to need an ER physician, it is what is deemed a code blue, where a person is without pulse and without respiratory effort. So they need intervention rapidly, and we have a team that arrives, including an emergency room physician, a respiratory therapist, some specialized nurses, usually for adults, because we don't really have that much issues with infants. And so I called down and said, what are you guys doing? And they said that there was a troubled birth, and a baby was born and was having trouble. And I said, well, just go ahead and call a code. Don't wait. And I thought, I don't know why. Well, I do now, but at that time I didn't know why I would decide to go downstairs. And so I actually hoofed it down 4 flights of stairs to go down to OB to just see what was going on, because it didn't feel right. And so I arrived, and at that time, I think actually the first person that I saw was Becky. Came down through the department. First person that I saw was Becky, who is really a good friend of mine, and we've been working together for years. My entire career here at the hospital, Becky's been here with me. And she came outside, kind of gave me a quick rundown, and basically said that this was a beautiful Christian family, that that the baby was not doing well at all, and she began to cry. We were outside the room, and we stopped for just a moment, and we said a prayer. I held her, and we just prayed for God to intervene and to take care of the baby and the family.
She's still not born yet.
No, she is born.
At this
She is
point,
born.
yeah, at this point she's born. And when you look into the room, you kind of have to imagine that there's a bed with Mom on it, and Dr. Judalina working on Mom, trying to finish up everything. Daughter's at the bedside, head of the bed with Mom, praying and crying. Dad's crying and praying. And I look across the room, and baby Siara is on what's called a radiant warmer. It's an area that would put babies to work on and keeps them warm. And baby is lifeless, and baby is kind of a gray purple. And the team is working on her, including compressions and breathing for her. So there's, just by me looking across the room, not knowing all the details, it's not a good picture to see, and it's certainly terrifying, really. And there was just a beehive of activity of about 15 people that had rushed to be a part of the code. And I kind of came into the room, and the only thing that I kept doing was kind of helping to direct people, get things that we needed. And I actually put my hand on Manuel's shoulder a few times, touched your toes when I'd go by, and I was just kind of agreeing in prayer that the Lord would intervene, and just keep praying, is what I kept saying to everybody. And they were just beautiful in that they were praying basically. I often describe it not as a quiet little, please and thank you prayer, but a really urgent, a guttural prayer reaching out to their Lord, asking for mercy. I mean, that's the only way I could describe it. And being a little Pentecostal girl, they were praying in the heavenly language. And to me, there was a real precious presence of the Holy Spirit in the room, and I couldn't imagine why God wouldn't just take care of baby Siara. I was sitting there thinking, okay, she's going to pinken up any minute now, because God's here. We're all praying. It's not a. As I'm looking through the room, Becky's there. She's a wonderful Christian woman. Kathleen Overton, who came from the emergency room as part of the code team, wonderful Christian woman. I love the Lord. My educator was outside. She was praying. She's a Christian woman. So pretty much everybody that kept coming down, had a basis from which to draw on the Lord. Little different denominations, but basically Dr. Judalina, like you say, he's a very staunch Catholic and prays every day, and so we're all in agreement as touching this baby. But I was actually just quite overwhelmed by the presence of the Lord in the room, and actually, as standing in the room, it was kind of surreal. Just you've sort of everything spinning around. You've got the baby over there. You guys are, having to do. I know you were terrified and praying, and in a beautiful way. It was just kind of a very unique experience. I think for all of us, each of our stories were a little different, but it was very, very unique and very special. I feel very humble. That I got to observe.
You got there about how long after? Any
Well,
idea?
it was shortly after she was born, and Becky described to me that she'd been about 8 minutes stuck on the
with
perineum.
the cord compressed.
With the cord, with no oxygen at that time, and
Right,
delivered
because-
basically lifeless. And they began resuscitation immediately. And this team just kept working for
Right.
like another 21
Now-
minutes or so.
And we wanted to talk just a little bit about the birth complications, specific this birth complication when the umbilical cord